Good afternoon and welcome to the final in a series of grant writing workshops. The Spring 2021 Faculty Rise Grant Writing Workshop Series is about post-submission guidance. What happens after you have submitted your proposal? And today our guest trainers are Kimberly Loesch and Shonda Green with special guest Elizabeth Johnson Vasquez. Kimberly?
Thanks, Karen. Welcome everybody to the workshop today. We've talked a lot in the past about what happens prior to submission of your proposal. So today we're going to talk about what happens after you submit and what to do with the Office of Sponsored Programs and what the Office of Research Advancement can help you with. So just a little information here at the beginning about the Office of Research Advancement. As you all know, Shonda and I are here to help you develop your grants and offer help with proposal writing. We give these grant writing workshops, and we will support you from the time you tell us you're writing a proposal through that final submission. We also now have Dr. Grace Abalaji with us, and she is in charge of promoting undergraduate and graduate research. And then we also have Karen Cotton with us, and she wants to tell the world about your research achievements. So if you have published a paper, if you have been awarded a grant, let us know, and she will let the world of Prairie View and the outside world know about your achievements. So as I've said before, we have talked a lot about these circles here, about completing the proposal notification form, meeting with Shonda and I about your proposal, talking with OSP about what they need, submitting your proposal draft to us for review, and then finally submitting it to sponsor programs for them to do the final submission to the funding agency. But we haven't really discussed what happens after you've submitted. So today, Elizabeth and I are going to go through a few things with you about what sponsor programs can do to help you post-submission when you get any type of communication from the funding agency, and then also what the Office of Research Advancement can do to help you in your resubmissions. So with that, Elizabeth, take it away.
Again, I'm Elizabeth Johnston Vasquez. I'm the Senior Proposal Administrator. You'll work with OSP, the Office of Sponsored Programs, on the actual submission of the proposal, on the budget development, putting together the required forms and getting it submitted. And of course, Shonda and Kim help you with the actual meat of the proposal. And she can explain what they do a lot better than I can. But what I'm here today to talk about is what happens after submission. After submission, we can have one of 5 things happen. It can be rejected, it can be declined, we can get an additional information request, we can get notification of anticipated funding, or we can get funding. The first option is rejection, and we usually find out about these pretty quick. We don't want this. This means we've done something wrong, that there is a missing document, or we didn't follow the number of pages we need, or the margins. And I have seen sponsors reject on very little information. Always, always follow those guidelines on the required font, the amount of spacing. The worst case scenario was, honestly, it was 2 lines that were just squinched together a little bit to prevent going to another page, and they rejected a 100-page proposal. Sometimes these are, we obviously want to always prevent these from happening. We don't want any rejections. So please, when we say your page, your margins are too narrow or whatever, there's a reason we're saying this, because we do know that they will sometimes get rejected without being looked at. The next one, if you can change, is a decline. Declines and rejections in the world of research administration are very distinct terms. We don't try to interchange them, even though in the normal world, they kind of get interchanged. A decline means we've submitted a proposal, it's made it to review, and we were not funded. Only about 1 in 5 proposals is awarded. The average is harsher with certain sponsors. And of course, the average is harsher with first-time submissions. So what we want to do is learn from the declines. Most sponsors will provide reviewer comments. In the natural course of things, our offices do not get these. We do on a couple sponsors, we'll send them directly to us, but most of them don't. Most of them send this information to the PIs directly. What we're asking you to do is to let us have a copy of those. This is primarily for the research development officers because they can take that information and help you on your next submission. You should always be thinking of that next submission. And of course, they're going to go into more information as they go further into this presentation on how they can help with these different kinds of things. But this is one of the 5. And like I said, don't get upset on a decline because only about 1 in 5 proposals is even awarded. But each time we resubmit, it makes a better proposal. Next one, Kim. The next item is what doesn't have a formal name. These documents come in and don't actually give a title to them. Usually they're an email from a program officer, but we kind of generically call them additional information request. What these are is they're asking for clarification. Either they're wanting you to provide maybe a layman's summary of what you're doing, or they're coming back and saying, you asked for 200,000, we can only give you 150,000. Would you be willing to do the work, and how would we need to rebudget? The thing about these is they're always very fast. They're almost always less than a week. So we ask that you contact OSP as soon as you hear about these, even if it seems like it is only information that you need to answer. We still like for you to give us a heads up that they're asking you for information, because that means they might turn around and ask for information that our office needs to be involved in. And we want to, anything to make these ASAPs, give us more time to work on them. And we also always ask that you share the original communication, because often it's in an email and they're using jargon, and we don't want you to miss something that myself or my colleagues might be able to recognize more quickly. That's another step that we need to take care of. These are never a guarantee, but they're always a good sign. It usually means you've made it past the first round of reviews and we'll be going to the next round of reviews. The next slide, please. Anticipated funding. These are kind of tied into the additional information request, but they're also slightly different. Sometimes we just get an email that said from, say, the program officer that says, I'm recommending you for funding. Sometimes it out and out says you will be funded. These are not legal documents. We need a legal award document or a legal contract. But these, obviously, when they're saying you will be funded, are very good news. What we would like for you to do, though, is use this time wisely. Get your, if you are working with human subjects, get your IRB approvals in place. If you're working with animals, get your IACUCs in place. We cannot release funds to you to spend until those things are in place. So if you get this anticipated funding notification, that's a sign for you to take care of some things, but it's also give us a heads up, because I put it in a little, I do everything virtually, but I put it in a little pile that I keep an eye out, and we'll make sure to reach out to the sponsor if we haven't heard from them in a while. And the next slide, please, Kim. Funding. This, of course, is the best option. The #1 option is to get funded. So it's obviously always good news. But what I want to talk about here is some of the steps in between. We have honestly gotten emails from PIs in the past that says, hey, I hear I'm going to get funded. What's my account number? It's not quite that simple. We are here to protect the university and to protect your research. So we have some steps that we need to take. The first thing is we would like for you to always notify our office. Some of the big sponsors such as NSF and NIH automatically know to do that. Some of the smaller sponsors don't. They'll email the PI directly. We would much rather you notify us and we hear from the sponsor too, and we get notified more than once than to have not heard about something. So please go ahead and let us know that this is coming. And then our office will take the next steps to get things set up. I referenced this before. Compliance items have to be taken care of. The main two are the IRB approval for human subjects and the IACUC approval for animal research. Those have to be in place before we can give you access to an account number. So we're asking that you, once you hear, we might submit a proposal and not get it for a year. So we don't want you to necessarily go through the paperwork a year early. But as soon as you start anticipating funding, start on these processes. Once the award document's in, if it's not done, kind of push the system a little bit to make sure they get done. I want you to know that our office is the office that will officially sign any contract. The contract does need to be negotiated and signed by both Prairie View and the other organization before we can set up an award for you. Know that that can take some time, especially just different situations can cause that to take some time. The third bullet is talking about a situation where we're a sub-awardee. We do a lot of these. These are great ways to build your research portfolio and to get funding at the university and for your research. These are situations where, for example, the University of Texas is submitting a proposal and we're going to get some of that. What happens is you will usually be notified from the lead PI at the lead organization that we've heard anticipation of funding. But I want you to understand that first, their university has to do all the same steps I just described. Then they have to issue us a subcontract. And so that's just a little bit more delay. We do our best to work efficiently and get the stuff set up. Like I said, the main reason I'm explaining some of this is simply so you know that we can't just give you the account number on day one. It does take a little bit of time to process these steps to protect all involved. And I think I have one more slide. So after we get either an award, which is what we get from NSF, which means they have standard rules and regulations that we have to follow. So they do not send us a whole new contract. They just say, here, you're getting funded, follow our standard rules. Or after we have negotiated a contract, the information goes to project setup. They are going to do everything to set up your project in Maestro and also to set up your account number in Famous. One thing they're going to ask you to do is to create an account profile form. This is basically like a signature card at the bank to say who can all sign off on different documents. But they are also going to go through and review all the documents again in order to create a list of quick access information for you. They are going to make sure that the budget that we submitted at proposal and the budget we're awarded matches. They're going to set up the account in Famous and put the items in the different budget categories. They're going to confirm your IACUC and IRB are in place, and they're going to make a list of deliverables in Maestro so that Maestro can email you when you have a technical report due. I guess there actually is one more slide. I'm sorry, I lost count. Ready to begin. The after all these information is done, our account setup group creates what's called an SPS report, which is a sponsored project summary. This is a 1 to 2 page document that gives you the high points. It gives you all your contact information, and in this process, it's also set up some auto reminders within Maestro for you to work through the life of the project on this. We want you to learn and use Maestro's researcher portal. And we also want you to be in communications with your project administrator through the life of the project so that the project will go smoothly from the beginning and continue to stay on track. And the last thing is we need to just start your next proposal. This is a continuing process. Even if you're funded, you need to start thinking of that next one out the door for more research availability. And also, if you're not funded, you need to start thinking of either doing a official resubmission or just submitting again with another angle, but having learned from the first experience. I know I went through that really quickly, but did anybody have any questions?
Yes, if you have questions, you can either share them in the chat and we'll read them out, or you can just unmute and ask. Karen, do we have any questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat. There was one that came directly to me. Someone's wanting to know about the Faculty Rise program. So Elizabeth, if you could maybe address that later, directly or.
Well, those are slightly different. Those are internal funds.
Mm-hmm.
Those are handled. I'm actually not sure the best person in the office to ask about that. Our office, the Office of Sponsored Projects, handles external funding. Mm-hmm. So those funds that are state or Prairie View money that's just being offered as another opportunity, there's information on our website on how to do that. But also know that the Texas A&M University and the system offices have versions of funding also. It's also considered internal money because you're a system employee. Right. But don't forget to go and look for those also.
Krish, could you speak to the RISE program?
Kim?
Yes.
What is the question?
The question is, the person wants to know more about the RISE and the prize. And here's another question. The follow-up says, I mean the direct seed funding from Faculty Rise office, such as prize. They want to know more about that.
Probably we can discuss offline.
Okay.
That question doesn't really deal with the NSF. That is the focus today. So please ask that person to send me an email. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. Thank you. And here's another question. For an awarded grant, should we start the account profile once we receive notification of funding, or do we wait until the procession of the award has happened?
I think one of the fields on the form is the account number. So I think once they get to that step, we're not quite fully done with setup yet, but we've kind of gotten it started. They will reach out and give you an account number so that you can start the account profile form. Okay. Thank you. And I think it needs about 4 or 5 signatures, but it's a post-award item and it's not something I handle daily. Right. Okay. Are there any additional questions? And feel free to put them in the chat box, either in the open chat box so that everyone can see them, or send them privately to me. Okay, we can move forward. And if you think of something, just put it in the chat box. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Okay. So now we're going to go on and talk about how Shonda and I can help you if you've been declined and you want to resubmit or you want to submit your proposal somewhere else. So again, as Krish said, and I don't know if I alluded to this in the beginning, but we're going to just cover scoring from NSF and then kind of replying to those reviewer comments. Each funding agency is a little bit different in how they score your grant, what they expect for a resubmission or a new submission if they don't do resubmissions. And so we figured it was, or we thought it would be best if we just kind of concentrated on one agency at a time. So for future presentations, we'll cover what happens with USDA, what happens with NIH, Department of Defense. But for today, we're going to focus on the NSF. And prior to starting the presentation, I put a couple of links in the chat box. One of them is to the NIH policy, website. There are a lot of resources there, and they have videos of past webinars where they've given content on anything from like writing your proposal to merit review. So if you're interested in how NSF looks at merit review and how they review proposals, there's past webinars that are there. It's a good resource link. If you have any questions about NSF, go there. The other link is I'm going to show you kind of some criteria that NSF uses for scoring your proposals. And so that link goes to a sheet. And so you can kind of look at how they break things up and what they ask for. It's a little bit, that's a kind of a general form. Depending upon the funding announcement, there may be different criteria that pertain to like a training grant as opposed to a research grant. So that's just kind of like a general guideline. But remember when we said to read the funding announcement all the way to the end? Well, after you get past what you need, documents you need, and what information you need to put in your proposal to submit, there's a whole section on merit review. And in that section, they talk about, in general and specifically for those funding opportunities, what criteria they're going to judge your proposal on. So as I said, we're going to talk about NSF. So when you get your reviews back from NSF, if you've been declined, you're going to get an overall rating of excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. And so what they do is they ask their reviewers to give you this score, and then they ask to give a written justification and the factors that were considered in the overall impact score. And then separately, there's the intellectual merit section and the broader impact section. Within each of those sections, there could be a variety of different criteria that have to be, that contribute to that score for that particular section. So for intellectual merit, there may be like 2 or 3 different subcategories that they check off to see if you've met those criteria. Same thing for broader impact. This link is what I put into the chat box, and it will take you to the generic general document, so you can kind of see if you want how the reviewers are asked to break down their scoring. So you've gotten your decision back and you are declined, and so you get the reviewer comments. Please read the reviewer comments as soon as you get them. I know everybody hates to get bad news, but in essence, it's not bad news, because you're going to get feedback so that you can either A, make your proposal better, or they're going to tell you kind of where you're lacking in certain things and where you're really good in certain things. So even though it's kind of perceived as a negative, it really is a good thing that you're getting this feedback. So please, please, please open the document and read it, and then send it to Shonda and I, because we want to see, especially if we've helped you with your first submission, we want to see what the reviewers found, what they liked and what they didn't like. It also helps us too, so that we know in the future, the more reviewer comments we read, the more we understand what NSF is looking for, and the more help we can give you in the future. So again, read your comments and then send them to us and let us read them and let us help you make your proposals better. Additionally, you might have questions about some of the reviewer comments. You might have questions just about the overall score. Contact the program officer and get some feedback from them. You know, there could be a variety of reasons why you got the score you did and didn't get funded. Maybe your project wasn't suitable to the funding announcement, or as the NSF program officers always say in their webinars, make sure that your research fits the directorate and the division that you're applying to. Because if you're applying to, like, say, material science and you're actually really physical science, the material science is going to decline your proposal because it doesn't fit their division and their scope of work. So so talking to the program officer, you can get that feedback. And then they can also maybe give you some comments and some advice about what to do next. And when you're going to the program officer, what's probably best, again, read the reviews. If there's something that you don't understand from the reviewer comments or you don't necessarily agree with, put it in an email and send it to the program officer so they can kind of have a heads up of what you'd like to discuss. They may email you back. They may say, can I call you, or can we set up a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever. But you always want to, you know, think about the reviewer comments and what your response to that comment would be. And try, you know, sometimes you might read it and it's inevitably it's reviewer 2 who's going to give you some bad comment. And you're going to be like, well, he just or she just missed the point. Get that out of your system and then say, okay, let's sit down and figure out what they're trying to tell me. And then, you know, either address that with a program officer or maybe address that with Shonda and I. Maybe we can look at it because we're not as tied to your proposal as you are. We're tied to it because we helped you, but we're not as tied to it as you are. So maybe we can be a little bit more objective in reading those comments. And then ultimately, as we go through this, Shonda and I can help you with content. We can help you with making sure you have the right documents and that that you have all of the requirements for that funding opportunity. But sometimes we don't really know your science or your research. You know, if you're talking about cancer cells and cancer therapeutics, I can help you with content because that's my background. If you're talking about an education or student training or student teaching or something with the arts and humanities, that's Shonda's background, maybe she can give you a little bit of help with the actual research content. However, it may be best, especially if the reviewer comments come back and they're just like, yeah, it's a good research plan, but you know, maybe you're lacking here, or they give you some advice to do maybe this set of experiments, or they think you're missing this set of data or something. So it's a good idea, even before you send it off in the first place, is to have it reviewed by a colleague. Maybe it's your PhD mentor who you trust their opinion. I still talk to my PhD mentor yearly, at least once or twice a year, we touch base. And I have asked him in the past to look at things for me. So, you know, find a trusted colleague, someone who's going to know what your research is and how you go about doing it, and get their opinion. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking to ask someone else to like read and give you feedback, but it really will help you in the long run. So a little bit about proposal resubmission to NSF. NSF considers each resubmission as a separate proposal. So that means that it's So like if you went to NIH, if you got declined, you would resubmit that proposal to the same funding announcement, maybe. Here, even if you submit it to the same funding announcement, it's going to be considered a separate proposal and not an actual resubmission. And this is probably done in because, you know, if you didn't fit the directory and you go to a different directory, it's still the same funding announcement, but it's a different directory. So they consider it a separate proposal. With all proposals that are declined, you're going to be asked to respond to the reviewer comments. So in the NSF, in your NSF resubmission, you're going to have a part of the project summary or the project narrative where you're going to have to specifically address all of the reasons that the reviewers gave you for your first proposal being declined. Again, if you have any questions about this, you're going to contact the program officer. And of course, Shauna and I will be here for assistance in resubmission. We'll read the comments. We'll try and figure out where the holes were with you and how we could fill them, or, you know, how you can recraft it to go to a different directory. But we are here for you. So please take advantage of our assistance. So just a couple of things to go over for NSF that contribute to the review and the reviewer's comments is, you know, intellectual merit considerations. Make sure you're advancing the knowledge in your field. Is it original? Is it potentially transformative? Those are things that they really look for. If you just propose some experiments that someone else did, but you change one or two variables, that's not really original and it's not really advancing knowledge all that much. So you really want to think about how original and how you're going to advance the knowledge in your field is with your research. Another thing with intellectual merit to consider is the PI credentials. They look at your prior work, internal and external resources that you might have in your publications. And if for any reason they question the PI credentials, then maybe in order to resubmit that proposal, you want to look for a collaboration, or you want to look for someone who has that expertise that you may not necessarily have right now, that you would gain by getting this grant, and then bring them on board for your proposal if you can. And then, you know, another thing is how well conceived and organized is the project. So they want to see that you've given some thought to it and that you have a logical time frame and a stepwise research plan to carry out your experiments and get the data that you need, or carry out your training program for recruiting the necessary students. So again, you want to like sit down and really think about and organize your project in a timely manner. And then lastly, you know, is there sufficient access to institutional resources, instrumentation, again, collaboration and expertise? This goes in most proposals, they just want to know that you have the support that you need to carry out your proposed research. Again, broader impact considerations. Are you contributing to discovering and understanding some of a particular pedagogy or a particular research that promotes training and teaching and learning of students? And this is always a big one for us since we're an HBCU, is broadening the participation of underrepresented groups. Also, how is this going to impact the infrastructure for research and education at Prairie View, or maybe for, you know, Waller County or Texas, or, you know, are there bigger implications for your research than just your own career? Dissemination of the results. Again, you want to make sure that the world knows about what you're doing, whether it's you know, your world within your research area or the greater community or worldwide. You want to make sure that you're getting your results out there. And then basically for broader impacts, it all kind of boils down to how is this going to benefit society? You know, is it going to, how is it going to help Prairie View or Prairie View A&M? How's it going to help Prairie View or again, Waller County or, you know, Houston, or are you going to bring in, you know, underrepresented students to go out and be teachers in biology and in STEM areas where they're lacking? So things like that, you want to make sure that you really address how this is going to benefit society. So that kind of wraps up like looking at what NIH does. And now we're just going to touch on a few common problems with proposals. And I've probably gone over this a little bit, and this, so it's going to be a little redundant, but we'll go through this pretty quickly so we can get to questions at the end. So, you know, again, some common problems: lack of new or original ideas. You want to really try and push the envelope with what you're doing in your research. You also want to give sound reasoning and sound support for why you're taking this research approach. If you're just kind of like, well, I just want to do this because, that's not going to fly. You need to really support it with background research, with, you know, saying this is what we know, this is how things have been done, and this is what we're going to do in the future. And again, some of that kind of goes into how, like the next bullet point, which is having a superficial or unfocused research plan. You know, if you lay your foundation, then this isn't a problem. So again, really think about your references and your background. Always, always, always give some background and reference different papers, especially like for training and education grants. Occasionally we get things and people are just like, we want to recruit, or we want to go out into the community and teach middle schoolers about some chemistry or some biology or something. And they don't go into the fact that, no, what we really want to do is we want to go into school districts or to middle schools where there's a fair amount or a significant amount of underrepresented minorities, and we want to make them interested in science. And here are reasons why, you know, African American middle school girls aren't encouraged to do STEM. And, you know, you want to back up what you want to do with a little bit of research and background information so that the reviewers know that you understand what the problem is and that you have a good idea for how to fix it or how to transform it. You also want to give enough detail when you're explaining your project so that they know what you're talking about, that you're just not like, well, I want you to give me money to treat some cells with a cancer drug. Talk about the cancer that you want to look at. Talk about the drugs that you want to explore. Talk about, you know, how you're going to do your experiments. You need to give them enough detail so that they know that you know what you're doing. Again, you really need to have published work. You need references. So that also indicates to the reviewers that you know what's going on in your area of expertise. Lack of experience, again, if they perceive that you haven't, you know, you don't have enough publications or whatever, again, looking for collaborations or someone with the experience just to say, yes, we're here to back them up, but they know what they're doing is always a good thing. And then you might not discuss future funding or the future of the project. So really and truly, you need to be a little bit of a visionary. So you need to say, this is what I want to do in the here and now. But if I get to do this and I get the results I want, then this is how it's going to impact my future and the future of my research in this area. And you don't have to like spend a lot of time on this, but you need to be forward thinking enough that you can say, if this works, this is what's going to happen next. And I'm just going to plug here, all of these problems can kind of be overcome if you go and do what we've talked about in the past, and that's a logic model. If you sit down in the very beginning and you think about your resources and your input, and then how you're going to accomplish your research, and then what your total outcomes might be. In a nutshell, that's your proposal, and that would address all of these problems that somebody might find with your proposal. So again, we're just going to go through a few problems and solutions. So here, your proposal is too ambitious, the scope of work is too large. If that comes back and they're like, yeah, we don't think you can do this, you might want to think about simplifying your project. Maybe take it and look at it. Can you just, instead of having 3 specific aims, can you take specific aim 1 and expand it and make it a proposal in and of itself? You don't want to like simplify it so much that they think it's not enough, but sometimes, you know, you can be like, well, I'm going to build a model rocket, and then in aim 3, you're going to go to the moon. That might be a little bit too much of a stretch. So you have to find something kind of in between that works, and say, you know, I'm going to hone in on this and ask for funding for just one piece. Or like if you're looking for equipment and it's multiple pieces, maybe splitting that into 2 different grants might work, and you'll get your funding. You know, if you're doing a training grant and you're like, I'm going to train 60 students, that might be overly ambitious. Maybe you cut it back and say, I'm going to train 20 students. So you just, if that comes back, you just want to make sure that you propose enough that you can pull it off within the time frame of 3 to 5 years, which is what the time frame of most proposals are. So another problem, again, we've talked about this, if the principal investigator lacks experience, reach out for collaborations, or you know, an expert or a past mentor or something to come on and maybe not be a co-PI, but maybe be a senior personnel, where they can lend their name and their experience to your proposal and your research. And again, they can say, this person has what it takes to pull this proposal off. Budget justification. Now, this one is a little bit, if they come back and tell you that your budget justification is the reason for not funding your proposal, there's probably some other reasons in there too. But, you know, make sure your proposal is reasonable. And again, if you work with Elizabeth and Vita and sponsor programs, they know what's reasonable for a budget, you know, and they know that what the different funding agencies are looking for, like who's more lenient, that you could just put, yeah, I want $5,000 in lab supplies, versus who's going to come back and say, oh, I want you to itemize everything, and then I want a quote for, I mean, Elizabeth, I was working with Elizabeth the other day, and she said that they had a proposal where they came back, and every year the proposal was funded, they had to get a quote for construction paper because it was for an educational grant. So there's just little things like that. But mostly you just want to make sure that, you know, if you need $5,000 for lab supplies, then you need $5,000 for lab supplies. But don't ask for $10,000 if $5,000 will do. So just kind of, and again, that goes back to kind of thinking about the whole overall project and what you really need to pull off your research. So sometimes they think that you won't be successful in this project, or they question different aspects of your proposal that say, we don't think they've really thought this through clearly. So we've said in the past, and I'll say it again here, you want to really state your objectives in as clear of language as possible. So if you can address who, what, when, where, and how in the narrative, then you should have a successful project. And again, to get to this point, you know, maybe making a logic model, or sitting down and making a flow chart, you know, sitting down and making some type of figure that helps you think through the steps might be the first thing that you do in order to make a clear timeline, have a clear and focused research project, and therefore that would lead to the success of your project. So these are just some excerpts from past reviewer comments. I don't think they come from Prairie View. Then we just found them online. This first one deals with references. And so, you know, you really want to make sure that if you reference something in your proposal, that it's in your bibliography. I have never experienced someone coming back on a proposal saying we can't find your reference, but that's definitely within the scope of the reviewer. And again, it goes to showing that you can back up what you're proposing because you know what the background and what other research has been done. Here, the comment 2 has to do with maybe not being in the right NSF program or right NSF directory. So again, you know, if it comes back and it says maybe you're not so, if you know, material science is not where you need to be, you need to be in physical science. So then you would resubmit to physical science. But again, you would address the reviewer comments within your new submission to physical science. And so hopefully that would make your proposal stronger. And then lastly, this one is questioning infrastructure and access and budget. So again, as I said, you want to make sure that you kind of have everything lined up and that what you're proposing is going to be not easy, but that you can do, that the institutional, departmental, laboratory structure that you have will support it, and that you can justify either the expense, or here it says the users and the number of hours and the demand. So again, you know, that just goes to like trying to think about your project as a whole instead of kind of breaking it down into little parts that don't necessarily all fit together. So with that, that kind of ends the meat of this presentation. We just want to remind you that whether it's a new submission or a resubmission, we would like everyone to go to our website and click on the proposal notification form to let our office and Office of Sponsor Program know that you're either submitting a new proposal or you plan to resubmit the proposal that got declined. And I'm not sure, we'll have to, I know for like if it's a limited submission, you have the ability to attach your limited submission application. But I don't know if this would be a good place where you could attach your reviews, maybe if you was a resubmission. We'll have to check into that. We'll ask Krish in a minute when we get done. But this way, all the parties know that you're either going to do a new proposal or you're planning to resubmit. As always, our office exists to assist. Krish, Shonda, and I will be happy to help you with anything research related, research develop or proposal related, finding funding announcements. I'm sure you all have seen emails from all of us saying, hey, NSF has this announcement, or NIH has put this announcement out. So that's what we do, and we'll help you all the way from finding a funding announcement through your proposal submission. Again, Karen Cotton is with us, and she wants to tell the world about your research. So, you know, if you get an award or publish a paper, or you just have something really cool, contact her. And then Grace Abalaji is our undergraduate research director. So with that, I think I am done, and I will take any questions with the assistance of Krish. And And also, I would like to say that Shonda was not here today. She sends her regrets, and she's sad that she can't be here, but she's a little bit under the weather. So thank you. And
thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Kim, for a fantastic presentation. Let me answer the question raised by Kim, whether to attach reviews with the proposal notification form in the case of a resubmission. Actually, our limited submission guidelines require you to use resubmission, to attach reviews along with your pre-proposals. So if you want to resubmit a proposal, it is a very good idea we can consider along with the proposal notification form. But unless they come to the Office of Research Advancement, that requirement may not serve the purpose.
Kim, there's another question in the chat box, and the question is, how many times should you submit a proposal that is not chosen for funding? Kind of touched on that, but if you would expand.
Okay, so you can submit or resubmit your ideas as many times as you want, maybe not to the same funding agency, but to NSF, I don't think that there is a limitation. Krish,
they will, quite honestly, the program officer will remember. She will remember what proposals have been discussed. So it is not a good idea to keep on resubmitting the same project for two reasons. Number one, advances will be occurring elsewhere on the globe with the funding from NSF or similar agencies. So science doesn't stop for you to catch up after 2 or 3 years. So it's not a good idea. And reviewers' comments will give you a sense of whether to go further or to look for a different project. So it's very unlikely one should try more than 2 or 3 times. And as you have pointed out, perhaps changing the scope or the focus and looking for a different agency.
yeah, and I think if you're reapplying and it's still being declined, really bring us in and let us look at it, because maybe we can help you, and we can be like, this really doesn't belong with NSF, it belongs at NIH, or maybe it belongs to, there's a specific thing with Department of Defense. So reapplying, as Chris said, more than 3 times to the same funding proposal is probably not a good idea.
Also, NIH and NSF will require you, when you resubmit, it has to be on a different project. You can't resubmit a proposal on the same project, probably more than twice in the case of NIH. And in a similar way, NSF will also monitor. They have all the records, what you have submitted, what the titles, proposal content. So, and each time, in the case of NSF, it will go to a different set of reviewers. So they will look at it as a new submission, and if you keep on getting negative comments, perhaps the project is not worth pursuing.
I don't see any additional questions in the chat box, Kim.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? You can unmute and ask. Again, Shonda and I would really appreciate it, especially if we've helped you with the initial submission, that you let us know that your proposal was declined, and that you send us the reviews, because we really want to help you get your funding and get your research going. So, and as I said in the beginning too, the more reviews that we get to read from the funding agencies, the better we understand what they're looking for. So in that initial setup, that initial proposal, we can be like, hey, you know, maybe based on what we've seen before, this might not fly. So maybe you want to try this, or maybe you want to state it a different way. What was I? Oh, sorry. We also are starting office hours every Wednesday at 1:30. I will have to check again on how the link is set up, or if there's just a place that you can go and click a Zoom link and come and join Shonda and I. But if you're in the midst of writing a proposal and you have a question, or you just have some general questions that you don't want to answer, or you don't want to ask specifically here in this venue, then you can come to office hours, and she and I will be there, and we'd be happy to address them, you know, one-on-one, or, you know, if you have a more specific question about, like, I'm working on this funding opportunity and I don't understand what they mean by X, then we can sit down and look at it with you and try and figure it out. So every Wednesday at 1:30, we will be available via Zoom right now for office hours.
That's a great idea, Kim. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
And again, I will check, and we'll send out an email about how to access those, or to access the office hours.
Before you leave today, please take a minute and click on the link that has our survey for our Faculty Rise grant writing workshops. We certainly thank you so much for participating in the series. And as we close out the series, Dr. Krish, is there anything that you'd like to say to the participants?
Thank you for all the participants' time and attention. As Kim and Karen have said, we are here to help you. And if you start your proposal well ahead of time, it would be easy for all of us to help you put together an effective proposal. So anytime you have any question, or if you need assistance, please don't hesitate to contact our office. Again, thank you for your time and attention this evening.
And just one more thing I forgot. Next week, we actually do have a special session. Lucy Deckard from Academic Services, or I can't remember the name of her company right now, I'm sorry, it slipped my mind just now, is going to have a special session for us on NSF Career and Early Investigator Awards. So all of you assistant professors out there, tune in. I think she'll have some good information for you.
And that concludes our 2021 Spring Faculty Rise Grant Writing Series. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.